Welcome to our Q4 2020 presentation. What a year. Looking back, clearly the toughest year for Björn Borg as a brand and for me as an individual. But looking at the results, as we will showcase very soon, I'm very, very pleased. I think we used the opportunities given to us. We handled all the challenges that was confronted us, and we came out, I would say, actually stronger. We also can conclude that during a crisis, many different opportunities are popping up if you're looking close enough. And we have identified a number of them, but just want to highlight a few. One is that there is a big physical activity gap currently creating a very polarized world where a few are training more than ever, whilst another group is training less. For us, that gives us an opportunity to continue to commute our brand mission, which is to inspire you that you indeed can become a better version of yourself if you add physical activity and training into your life. It's not about creating any Olympic gold medalists. It's not even about winning. It's just about understanding that the best gift to yourself is to work out. And that trend is simply booming. Never before has so many thought so much on how they can become better, live longer, and feel better. During 2020, we also see an ongoing shift from physical retail into various digital environments, marketplaces, e-tailers, our own björnborg.com. And one of our biggest victories is that not only are we growing at a tremendous pace at our own e-com, we'll also increase our profit, turning our own e-com into one of our most profitable channels, making us ready to further fuel that growth, taking us closer to our long-term ambition of making 10% EBIT. And there's also, and this trend was happening well before the whole pandemic, but the fusion between sports and fashion, athleisure, that has also really boomed. And you can understand why. Of course, everyone's sitting at home. You are swapping your suits, your ties, all your working outfits to stuff that is much more comfortable. And of course, you'd rather do an interview in a comfortable t-shirt, in a pair of sweatpants, or a pair of tights than in a shirt or a costume. During Q4, and actually also in the beginning of 2021, many of our iconic style has sold out. We see a massive demand for products that are just in between sports and fashion. And that trend we intend to capture. And here we will invest even more. Last, of course, there's, and that's been going on also for a long, long time, a high talk around sustainability. But during 2020, we can see that going from nice to have, from a consumer perspective, it's now a must-have. And we are well prepared. Looking at our future collections, they're all 100% sustainable sourced. And we're ready to capture the consumers that are looking for a sustainable product. Together with our brand mission that a sustainable life is about adding physical activity and training to your everyday life. So with that said, I'll hand over to Jens and he will showcase some numbers from 2020. Hang in.
Okay, also from my side, big welcome to this presentation of the year-end report for 2020, and welcome to a fantastic Friday. Every Friday is fantastic. We're just ahead of our sports hour that's coming a bit later, so that we are certainly looking forward to. When looking at the summarizing the Q4 for 2020, we can conclude, as mentioned by Henrik as well, we are still in the pandemic, obviously, and we are still negatively impacted by the COVID-19 and the effects on our business. We see there's lockdowns in the Netherlands, lockdowns in Germany, in the UK, obviously affecting us quite hard. Net sales during the quarter isolated decreased with 18%, and that was mainly driven by a weak quarter for our wholesale markets in the Netherlands, in Sweden and in Finland. However, we see the opposite effect in Germany, in the German wholesale market, which is increasing. Also, our own e-commerce channel is growing a lot in the quarter. It's plus 53%. Currency neutral, we can see a decrease of 15%. As mentioned, the wholesale segment, wholesale channel, had a quite challenging quarter and was decreasing by 30%. And as I mentioned, driven by the Dutch, the Swedish and the Finnish markets. But overall, a positive development in the German market, mainly driven by our e-tailers. For our own retail segment, own retail channel, obviously it's been hit quite hard by the pandemic, and the decrease in total for total stores is 27, and that's mainly related to obviously a complete lockdown in the Netherlands towards the end of the quarter. Comparable stores decreased with 38%, obviously related to the effects of the coronavirus. The own e-commerce channel is having a really great momentum at the moment, and in the quarter, a positive increase with 53%. For our external distributors, we saw also a very good quarter, especially from our large distributor in Norway, which is they're having a great momentum at the moment, and also here we see a positive increase of 53% for the quarter isolated. The license segment, license business, there was a decline of 24% in the quarter, and here mainly we see bags, the royalty from the bags is representing this decrease. In terms of gross profit, we see quite a large increase in the quarter, 5.8 percentage points increase versus last year. So that's really positive, and this is the main drivers for this, besides the positive currency effects that we've seen versus the Swedish crown, is also related to the increased focus that we have on profitability in the organization at the moment, that we see really paid off in the quarter and giving positive results on the gross profit margin. Despite the tough effects that we've seen related to the pandemic, we see the net sales decreasing as mentioned. We do see the operating profit increasing versus last year. So we deliver an EBIT of 6.5 million versus last year of 1.4 for the quarter. So this increase is then obviously related to the gross margin increase that I just mentioned, but also the activities that we've taken to control or to reduce our operational expenses. So if I try to summarize what I just mentioned or visualize what I just mentioned in some sort of graphs here, on the left-hand side on the slide, we can see the net sales, and then the right side, the operating profit. So as mentioned, the net sales decreased 18% in the quarter. But on the positive sides, we have our own e-commerce, over 50% increase in the quarter. Distributors, mainly in Norway, doing really well at the moment. And our e-tailer segment within the wholesale business, so the pure online players like the Zalandos, the Boost, the Sportamore, they are doing really well with Björn Borg at the moment. On the downside, on the more challenging side, clearly the regular wholesale business where the retailers are struggling, as well as we are ourselves with our own retail business. On the profit side, on the other hand, we see this increase I just mentioned, so from 1 million to 6 million in the quarter. And really pleased to see that we can generate a profitable quarter with the pandemic going on and the decrease in the net sales. And this is then coming from these improved gross margin where we focus so much on profitability, but also that we have generally a very good control of our operating expenses and activities that we've taken to make sure that we control this in a good way. On the downside, obviously, besides the net sales going down, we also have increased slightly our wholesale discounts to be a good partner to ensure that we have good relationships going forward and that we help out in this pandemic and that we do it together. So summarizing the year-to-date numbers of the full year of 2020 in a simplified P&L, well, really, the pandemic has hit us hard, and the numbers are shown in the P&L clearly. So net sales for the full year of 2020 decreasing 7%, 6.8%. Could be much worse. I think, from my personal opinion, Björn Borg is a fairly small company in a big pond, if you want. And with that, we are taking the advantage of being fairly small, and we can adjust and be quite agile. And I think from a personal level, personal point of view, I remember when the pandemic came to all over the world, really, and we very, very quickly adjusted, changed meetings, changed focus. We adjusted everything that we did, and we basically took all our forces and all our power to go down to what can we do to ensure that we mitigate these negative effects. And I think that has helped us it could have been much, much worse. So a 7 or 6.8% decrease in net sales for the full year is quite good, I would say. From a gross profit margin, okay, we had a really good quarter. We see good trend, good momentum for the company where we focus on profitability. But let's be honest, our Q2 we were hit very hard, and that is still visible for the full year of 2020. So we have a gross profit margins decreasing with 1.2 percentage points. Operating expenses, on the other hand, we're taking lots of initiatives to ensure that we do what we can internally to mitigate the effects, and we see a decrease of operating expenses with 3%. So somewhere around 12-13 million decreased over the year. Operating profit, yes, we had a good quarter. We increased profit versus last quarter in Q4. However, again, Q2 was a tough quarter for us, and we still see the effects for the full year. So here we have a decrease in operating profit for the full year versus last year. So with that said, if I try to summarize this full year P&L into a more visualized, then on the left-hand side on the slide you see the what we call the total sales, the way we measure our performance in the company. On the right-hand side, same way, but in the operating profits. And then you can see we decrease, as I said, around 6% for the full year, and the main decrease is then coming from our largest channel, which is the wholesale channel, where we have a decline in most of the markets, to be honest. If we look at this from a full year perspective, Benelux, so Holland, Belgium, Sweden, Finland, and the UK, they're all decreasing. But there are positive trends as well. Germany, driven by the strong e-tailers, are increasing versus last year. Also our footwear business is increasing in the wholesale segment versus last year. Clearly operating profits are declining due to the sales decline, and as mentioned before, some slightly increased customer discounts, and also some bad debts happened during the year as our retailers are struggling. So in terms of DTC, direct-to-consumer channel, we see e-commerce, our own e-commerce, increasing 38% over the year, 53% in the quarter. Really good momentum for our own e-commerce. Obviously, this has been offset by our own retail, which is decreasing 8% over the year. In comparable stores, 24%. So the total decrease is much less than the comparable stores. Some of you might remember, during the summer we did a lot of pop-up stores in our retail markets to take some sort of, we thought that would be a more bigger share of domestic vacation, domestic holidays where the brand is strong, and that was really successful. So operating profits is actually in line with last year, even though sales is declining slightly. Distributor sales overall for the year, a slight decline due to mainly a poor development in our market in Denmark. Licensing business is decreasing versus last year as well, mainly related to bags, as I mentioned before. But we see also strong sales of footwear in the licensing, the royalty segment as well. So with that said, I am handing over to Henrik again to close this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. And as you've seen, in many ways, I think we closed 2020 stronger than the way we started. But as I said in the beginning of the presentation, we see a massive amount of opportunities around us. And one is definitely the whole trend around training. And that training is not so much about becoming, stronger or run faster or lift heavier, but actually to train to become a better version of yourself. Train to live longer, to be healthier, to be happier. And using those insights will give us an opportunity to continue to build a very strong brand. And the whole idea of building a brand that is focusing on train to live rather than living to train, we believe is a massive opportunity. And of course, the idea with the whole brand is to build the #1 sports fashion brand for those who want to feel active and attractive. We have clear KPIs to measure our progress, and we are making inroads. But we should remember, of course, and we should be proud over our past. Not too many years ago, this was an underwear company only. A market leader in Northern Europe with a super strong presence in colorful underwear for men. And the trick, of course, is to transform the brand into a sports fashion arena that's bigger, much more potential, but without losing relevance in the underwear category. And of course, now looking back, we can conclude that the declining trend that Björn Borg had until 2010 leading into 2014 when we launched the new business plan Northern Star is successful. So we have managed to move the brand towards a new arena, and at the same time we have managed to continue to grow and maintain our market leadership in men's underwear. And I'm super happy for that. And that gives me confidence that we are on the right track and that we can continue to build something very successful also in the future. The key to doing that change, of course, is to understand your consumer. So looking ahead a bit, 2021 for us is all about getting in-depth knowledge for the consumers. And there is numerous different ways of doing that. But to utilize those consumer insights will create a better tomorrow for us, will enable us to make more relevant products, to adjust our communication to better capture what the consumer really are looking for. And that will give us an advantage versus everyone else around us. The second one really is to, of course, continue to measure our progress towards that. And when we close 2020, we can conclude that if we present a list of brands in front of a consumer, they'll pick us as number 3. Only 2 global sports brands are ahead of us. We still managed to maintain our leadership in underwear for men's. So preference, which is when we ask consumer which brand from this list do you prefer, we get the highest score amongst every brand, again in Northern Europe. And last, of course, one challenge that we had in the past is our unaided awareness, meaning that do people go around and think about Björn Borg as a sports brand? And unfortunately, not so much, but that is also increasing. So that is up 50% versus last year. So we can see that the brand is evolving, is transforming itself to become stronger and stronger. And of course, part of that is our sustainability focus that is capturing the relevance right now from the end consumers. And here, I think we are well ahead, as I said in the beginning. We need to continue to invest in sustainability simply because, of course, that ties into our mission of building a brand that will enable you to become better long term. And that's for us is sustainability in essence. Our focus very clearly is online, not only in communication, but also in terms of where we believe we should sell our products. So marketplaces, e-tailers, bjornborg.com, that's where we see the potential. Knowing, of course, that physical retail still have a very, very important role to play. So our online attack that we launched, 3-4 years ago now has proven to be very, very successful. And we see strong growth from our e-com, our marketplaces, but also from our e-tailers. And we see profitable growth. I think for us here, we've seen that there's a window open in the market ready for us that we could capture to continue to build a profitable growth proposition going forward. So with that said, I just want to finish off with our mission. And again, it all comes down to creating an authentic, real, inclusive brand that has a clear reason for being. And we have that. We want to inspire you and everyone around you that you can indeed be more. You can do more. If you just add training and an active lifestyle, you can become so much stronger. And we believe that the world right now needs that more than any other time before. So with that said, thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoy the show, and remember to work out.
Hello and welcome to Erik Penser Bank. We are joined today by Björn Borg, and we're going to conduct a short management interview. Welcome, Henrik.
Welcome, thank you.
So some highlights from today's presentation. The Benelux area is a particularly interesting region considering the recent change in management. Could you elaborate a bit on your expectations from this change in management and whether you have identified any effects as of yet?
Absolutely. So of course I think Benelux is where we see in terms of countries our absolutely biggest potential. The brand is very, very strong. In the past, we also have very, very high turnover. So of course, since 2017, when we took it over from the former distributor, we have put in place a number of different initiatives to turn that market around. And it's taking a long, long time, but I'm super happy that we have now put that completely new management in place, and we can also see signs of improvement already in our last quarter 2020, predominantly in margin. So we are putting a lot of measurements in place to reduce discounts, to be much more selective in terms of which customers we're working with, and also of course to get our cost under control. The biggest challenge of course still is to get the turnover going again, to continue to build sales, which we can see in Q4 we did not succeed, predominantly however due to the very sort of strict lockdowns that we had in Netherlands and also Belgium during the last quarter of 2020.
Thank you. One important item for the company Björn Borg is the brand reception. Could you elaborate a bit on the initiatives that you carry out to increase the brand awareness, and maybe elaborate some on the effects of these initiatives?
Absolutely. So I think the brand is our biggest asset. Clearly, that's one of few things that really makes us unique. And looking at Björn Borg as an underwear brand, we have a very, very high awareness, both unaided and aided. So if we would ask consumers on the street, mention a men's underwear brand, then our unaided awareness is 95%. So super, super high. And that's the same in all of our mature markets, which is then Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland. That's where we do constantly our consumer measurements. The difference though is then when we look at the view on us as a sports brand, we see that here the unaided awareness is very, very low. So that means if we would ask an end consumer on the street, hey, make a list of different sports brands, then we are measured, 2-3 people out of 100 would say that, well, Björn Borg is a sports brand. However, on the second step, which means that we give them a list of brands, and one is Björn Borg, and say which of these brands are sports brand, then we get a super, super high awareness. So the challenge, of course, is to create, increase that unaided awareness, so people start thinking about us as a sports brand. And here, of course, the key initiatives is to be visible. So you can divide that into a couple of different focuses. So one is that we need to make sure that whenever you're walking into a shop floor, whether it's a department store or a sports retailer or a fashion retailer, that we are really visible with strong point of sales material. But also, of course, it's clear that we need to invest even further on online platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, to make sure that we are visible where consumers are. And our key focus is really to focus online. And here we believe that the way to build the brand is through influencers and different ambassador programs. So that's really the way we believe is the way to create and increase the awareness for us as a sports fashion brand.
Thank you. So looking back at this year, the first 3 quarters, we saw some reported non-recurring items. Could you elaborate some on whether there are any non-recurring items in this quarter, and where do they come from?
Absolutely. So I think you can divide probably in 2 bits and pieces. So of course one is that we got some support predominantly in Netherlands, up to 150,000 euro due to the decline in own retail predominantly and a loss of turnover. So they have a support scheme down there that is based on turnover loss. But on the other hand, we also had some one-off costs just shy of 200,000 euros for the restructuring that we have done both at the Stockholm head office but also in the Benelux head office. And that's of course our attempt to drastically reduce our personal expenses. So when we come in 2021, we come in as a much leaner team.
Thank you. So when the pandemic struck, you were quite quick to act on it and reduce the operating expenses and manage the cost structure. Among other things, you were reducing the staff cost. I was wondering, could you elaborate on the effects of this staff cost cutting and how you managed to cope with that?
Well, I think the quick answer is that we managed to cope because we have super fantastic and very talented people that are willing to do whatever it takes. So I think they really went above and beyond during 2020. When you cut away like 20% of the head office staff that we have done, of course you need to really clearly go through your priorities. So you just simply cannot continue doing things that is not directly impacting your key focus areas. So during the fall we reviewed the way we were working, and we also adjusted our business plan, and we took away all the stuff that was sort of nice to have and only kept the must to have. So I think what we have right now is a much more focused organization, simply because there's no room, there's just no time to do anything else. But ultimately I think the answer is that we have a lot of very talented people that are working really hard. And of course my job as a leader is to make sure that we also invest into those people so they can long-term deliver high performance. And we do that through compulsory training, physical tests, talk about stress, sleeping and eating, so you can really become your best version of yourself, so you can deliver on a high level over time.
Thank you. One increasingly important aspect of the clothing industry is the question of sustainability. Could you perhaps elaborate on your work with sustainability and whether you want to emphasize certain aspects?
Yeah, well, absolutely. So I think it's super important, of course, and it's been on the radar for a long time. And we initiated a number of programs already back in 2014 when we rolled out Northern Star. So sustainability is a core part of the way we want to build the whole business. And you can of course divide that into all kinds of different areas, but for us it's really about, on one hand, looking at transportations. So how do you transport your products from where they're being produced to where they're being sold? And here we're constantly evaluating so we can get closer and closer. Of course the biggest challenge is to get closer between where you produce and where you're selling. So that's something we're working on. So we've increased our production capacity in Europe because that's where we're selling the products. A second one, of course, is how you transport the goods. And here, of course, we focus predominantly on boats, which we know has a much better and lower emission impact than, for example, flying and train. So that's on the transportation part. And then, of course, when you produce the product, that's when you make the biggest impact on the environment. And here we have a number of different initiatives, and we're working with a number of different partners to enable us to become even better. But looking at, for example, Fall Winter 21 collection, 100% of the entire collection is sustainable sourced. So we are making a massive amount of inroads here too. And the last one for me is really about looking at the team. Sustainability for me is to create a work environment where you can perform at a high level over time without getting sick, without feeling stressed. And here we invest in the team in terms of physical training, compulsory sports hour, and to enable everyone to become their best version of themselves. And of course, underneath that there's a number of different things. I think it's super clear that in the past everyone spoke about sustainability as being important from an end consumer perspective. During 2020 and 2021, I also believe it's going to turn into becoming a must-have. So if you are not there, you will simply not be picked. And we are really ready for that. So I'm super proud of the sustainability work that we've done so far.
Thank you, Henrik, and thanks for joining us today.
Excellent, thank you, and have a great Friday.